Welcome, family.
Hey, guys.
We're back for another week. So we missed you last week, but it was for such a good cause. Like last week, we had the pleasure of celebrating the union of two of our.
It was a very interesting wedding.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
It definitely was unique. It had its own flavor. It had their personality written all over it, right? So we counseled them and we got to see them come into their union and start that journey together. It was so beautiful, and we are so blessed to have witnessed it. So big up to the Pauls, Lev Shen 2020. We love you guys, and we pray for you God's richest blessings on this journey as you move forward. So, with that being said, we are here this week to discuss weddings, planning your wedding, and
all the wonderful things that come with that.
Yeah. So we're no experts in the field. Yeah. So we got an expert in the field, and that expert happens to be my cousin's sister, my sister cousin, Jadie Soutar of the Plush Touch. So we're gonna start off as we usually do with a word of prayer, and then we're gonna hand over to Jadie for her to walk you through the steps of planning a wedding.
Yeah, but we want you to share this video with everyone you know considering marriage, even if they've already started to plan their wedding. Send it to them, because you never know, something that Jadie may share here today could be what they are looking for to help them.
Yeah.
So we want you to do that.
And also for persons who may not even be in a relationship yet, or you just have a dream wedding in mind. Yeah. What Jadie's going to share today will help you to have a more realistic expectation of what that will look like. And also, if you're like us and you've been married for a while and you're considering a vow renewal, this is good for you as well.
Yeah.
So we're hyped. We're so excited, because we're really, really looking forward to our vow renewal at some point in the future. So we're
not at some point. Not at some point. So our passes are booked. They promised us last week. And we're going to renew our vows in 3.5 years. So for year 15, we're going to renew our vows.
All right. Okay. You heard it here.
Yep. So I'm going to pray, and then we'll just jump right in. Yeah. So Lord, we just thank you so much for another opportunity to share and fellowship with our community. Father, we pray that for everyone that needs this guidance, may they find this video. I pray your blessing over just what we're about to do here. We pray your presence be here with us, and we pray that it's just a wonderful time. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. So we're gonna welcome Jadie now, and we ask that you join us in welcoming her to our platform. It is her first time with us, and we're gonna have her come in and do her introduction and her presentation on, and just share with you on how.
So she'll do a presentation, just kind of give you some things you want to consider, and then after that we'll have sort of a discussion. Some of the things that you may have on top of your mind to ask, or some of the things that we kind of went through when planning our own wedding, and just some of the things that we think may help you. So let's welcome Jadie.
Hey, welcome, Jade.
Hi guys. Thanks for welcoming me. Thanks for having me here.
Yes, absolutely. So, we're gonna just jump right in. No further delays. We're gonna hand over to you so that you can start your presentation, and then we can get into the discussion with our viewers as to what they may want to know about what you have presented today. So,
all right,
over to you.
Okay, so let's just get to the meat of the matter. As Renee said, I'm her sister cousin, Jadie Soutar. We're a decor and planning company. We're based in Tower Isle, to be precise, which is about 5 minutes away from Ocho Rios. So typically we do events that are within the close environs. We do most of our events are in Ocho Rios, St. Mary, as far as the Discovery Bay, some in Trelawney. Not saying that we don't travel outside of the environs, we do. It just comes at an additional cost. So most of our events are hosted here close in the Ocho Rios area, and we do events off-site as well as on resorts. So Plush Touch, as we said, we're operating for about 8 years now. I'm self-taught. I used to work in the bank before starting this business, and I've had no regrets. So there are a lot of lessons that I've learned over the last 8 years operating this business. And I want to, I've put some information together for you. Hopefully this resource will be useful for you at the end of it today. So let's just start with the number one question. The number one question that I get when I get a phone call or an inquiry: how much is it for a wedding? What's the average price for a wedding? Okay, so that will depend on a lot of factors. Weddings in Jamaica, especially on the North Coast where we are typically hosted in different types of venues. Now, the cost of the wedding will depend on the type of venue that you have booked or you're interested in booking. So we have venues that are private venues, semi-private, public venues, resorts like hotels. And so I want to briefly go through the different types and how it will impact your budget and your decision. Okay, so in the Ocho Rios area, most persons that come to the North Coast or come to St. Mary, Ocho Rios, Trelawney, along the North Coast, what do they come for? They come for the ocean. They come for the sea, the beach, you know, the features of the land that you don't typically get in Kingston or in a city built up area. You know, you're not going to find a waterfall venue in the middle of Halfway Tree, right? So persons that come this side usually come for the scenery, you know, they come for that feeling that you get from a venue with the ocean front or a beach access. So along the coast, most of the occupants along the coastline are, let's think about it, they're villas, hotels, or private property. So when you're booking a villa, or you found a villa that you're interested in hosting a wedding, and they say to you, okay, that's no problem, but you have to book a minimum of 3 nights. You have to book the property for a minimum of 5 nights. That will impact your budget. The venue cost is now tied into your accommodation cost. And so if you weren't planning on, you know, reserving a villa, 3 or 4 bedroom villa for 3 nights, that's going to, you know, push up that budget mark. Okay. However, with the villa venues, you might get the features that you're looking for in a venue. You will get the scenes, you know, like the beach or ocean front, depending on the type of villa that you want, and you'll get privacy because it's not open to the public. So for that reason, villas are a good choice for your weddings. Private venues. What's the difference between a private venue? This picture in particular is a wedding we did at Laughing Waters. A lot of persons may have heard of Laughing Waters, and it's maybe one of the most popular venues in the Outaouais area for this reason. One, you don't have to book the property for 3 nights or 5 nights. You don't have a minimum stay requirement. It does have a villa. It does have rooms to accommodate overnight stay, but most persons book the property for venue only, and it comes at a very attractive price when compared to booking a villa where you have to pay to use the environs, the grounds, the premises, as well as you have to book the rooms. So it will come in maybe a little more affordable than a villa venue, and you still get the privacy. So it's like a win-win situation. And so for that reason, private venues are very popular, especially this property. What is a semi-private venue? Okay, so this picture in the slide is a wedding we did at Conoco Falls. Conoco Falls is in the hills of Shaw Park in the Outaouais area. It has 2 waterfalls. It has rivers. It's like a tropical rainforest. It's really a hidden gem if you haven't been there. However, Conoco Falls is open to the public every day of the week, I believe. Yes, I believe even Sunday. And so you have, it's just like Hope Zoo, you know. So they have snakes and iguanas and parrots and turkeys and alligators. So it's like a mini zoo. So it's an attraction. People can climb the falls like a mini Dunn's River. So it's a very beautiful property, and they host weddings there. However, you don't have that exclusivity that you would have at a private venue such as Laughing Waters. So the price might be a little more attractive. However, the drawback is that it's not a fully exclusive rental when you opt for a property that is used for tours, for attractions, as well as weddings. A public venue, as it suggests, is, for example, the public beach. You know, this picture was a wedding ceremony set up on Outaouais Bay Beach. That's the long beach stretch that, you know, spans from the dock right around to what is now Moon Palace, that used to be Jamaica Grand. And obviously that is a lot more budget friendly, but it has absolutely no privacy. So that's the drawback there. Next. Okay, then the hotel or the resort. Now, this is, what would I say, ticklish? Because I would say all the hotels have different policies in regards to how you would be able to host a wedding there without staying or not staying. So most hotels, the bride and groom has to book, you know, a certain amount of nights at the resort to be able to get married there. If they're having guests, some hotels require a certain percentage of the guests to be staying at the resort for a particular amount of days or nights. This picture in particular is one that we did at Jewel Paradise Cove, and this is right as you pass Salem before you get to Runaway Bay. So you have Paradise Cove, and then you have Jewel Runaway Bay. Now, Jewel Paradise Cove is not a child friendly resort. So, you know, some persons may assume that they can't book a wedding there unless it's a small wedding, you know, with 10 people or 5 people because they have children, or, you know, their sister's kids have to come, and the property doesn't allow children to stay there. However, funny enough, this property is one that you can book a wedding there, you can host a wedding there, you can pay for your guests to come on property, and they don't have to stay. You don't have to stay. So this is quite unique. I have put the contact information for Jewel Paradise Cove weddings manager in this slide for ease of reference for anybody who may be interested in hosting a wedding at a resort. Now, the pros and the cons of doing a wedding at a resort: one, it's not all aspects of the wedding will not be private. So if you are going to do your ceremony on the beach or on a pier or anywhere on the hotel grounds, chances are you're going to want to do it somewhere that you have the water view. And if that's the case, then you'll have guests looking on and so on. More often than not, though, with the resorts, with the hotels, receptions are hosted indoors, and so the receptions are generally private and not open to all the hotel guests coming and going and looking. And so that's the advantage and disadvantage of hosting at a resort. Most other hotels, however, the guests have to be staying there. All right. So why did I go through the different types of venues or where you can host a wedding? As I mentioned before, it will impact your budget. So the first thing you have to do is determine your budget. Most persons call and they ask about weddings because they're inquiring. They got engaged, they're excited, and they want to start planning and they don't know where to start. I would say have a discussion with all the parties who are responsible for funding this event. Here's the reason. You may believe you have a budget of 500,000, or you've have that conversation with your spouse and you both decided that we're going to say 500,000. That's what we're going to spend on our wedding. Now, you've never done this before. You have no idea what things cost. But that is what, one, you're either able to afford because that's your cap and you have no more. You have no other way of getting more. However, there are times when your parents may want to contribute financially, or it's the parents of the bride and the groom who are funding the wedding. So if it's a combination where it's not just the bride and groom paying for the wedding and there are other parties involved, everybody needs to decide what is the budget. Now, the budget doesn't have to be one set amount, it can be a range. Now, here's the reason it's important to determine what that figure is. One, it will determine where you're going to get married. What do I mean by that? If you live in Kingston or you live in Montego Bay and you want to get married in Otorius, for argument's sake, and you have a budget of 500,000, it's going to determine where you get married. Here's the reason why. The next step says identify the location or the type of venue that you wish to use. If you have a $500,000 budget and you choose a venue or you want to get married at a venue that has no infrastructure in place, then 500,000 cannot host an event. Here's the reason why. And we'll get into this into detail later. If you pick a venue that has no shelter from rain, has no bathroom facilities, gives you no electricity, These are some basic things that you'd want to have covered, right? Now, if you were to take that 500,000 and approach a venue that is all encompassing, for example, a resort. The resort has everything there. They have the conference room that your reception will be. They have electricity on the property. They have more than enough bathroom facilities. You don't have to bring all of these things on site, on a venue, to be able to host the wedding because it's all there. So your 500,000 may take you a much further way than booking a venue that you have to bring everything on. Okay. So after you've decided where you want to get married, is it Ocho Rios? Is it Montego Bay? Is it Kingston? Is it St. Elizabeth? I would say try and find a wedding planner, a local wedding planner. I'm not saying that wedding planners in Kingston can't travel to Mobile, Negril, Ocho Rios. I'm not saying that. Here's the reason. If you book a planner in Kingston to host an event in St. Elizabeth, the chances are that that wedding planner is going to take their vendors that they're accustomed to working with to St. Elizabeth, because this is a team that they are confident in delivering an exceptional job. Now, the cost of that is going to be a lot more expensive than if you were to find a wedding planner in St. Elizabeth or Mandeville or somewhere closer to where you're hosting the event. And once you find a vendor, a planner that is in close proximity, the likelihood of them having contacts with other vendors in and around the community is very high. So these are things that will also impact how much you end up spending on your wedding. Once you decide, okay, this is the budget and I want to get married in this area, and you find a wedding planner, you're going to seek the assistance of that wedding planner to guide you to select vendors. Once the wedding planner has said, here are the vendors that I believe are going to fit your budget, give you the service that you want, it's up to you to do that research. You look into them and you do some homework. Once you're comfortable with the vendors, you secure them. You secure them with a deposit, and you leave the rest to your wedding planner to work out all the details. Okay. In this slide, we have a DIY wedding checklist. So Jadie, what if I can't afford a wedding planner? And what if I just want to do the wedding myself? Like, I can find vendors, and I know a lot of people, and Renee got married, and Trisha got married, and they can just tell me who all the vendors are, right? And I can just pay them, and the wedding will be good. Okay, fair enough. So let's look on this checklist, because there are millions of checklists on the internet, resources that modern brides are now using to guide this process, especially the brides that are very hands-on and want to play an integral part in their planning process. So here are some of the things that you want to consider when thinking about a wedding. Your attire. What are you going to wear? The bride's gown, the groom's outfit. If you're going to have a bridal party, are they going to pay for the dresses? Are you going to pay for the dresses? Shoes, jewelry, hair accessories, the veil if you're going to wear one, a garter if you're going to wear one, vests, ties, suspenders, glasses. I mean, it's all there. Wedding rings is another big ticket item. And some may say it's probably the most important because you're going to wear it for the rest of your life and you want to look down and see something nice. Fair enough. Stationery. Stationery would include invitations if you're going to do hard copies, menu cards, name cards, programs, if you so desire, table numbers, if you want a guest book. Most of these here are not mandatory. However, I've included them for those who may be so inclined to get them. Accommodation, what we spoke about earlier. If you're going to get married in an area that you don't live, where are you going to get dressed? Are you going to get dressed in Kingston and drive an hour and a half to Ocho Rios to get married? No. You're going to have to consider where you're going to get dressed. Is your hairstylist going to be able to come there? Is your makeup artist going to be able to come? If you're getting married at a resort, at a hotel, chances are you'd have to use the service providers that are at the resort. Otherwise, you'd have to pay a vendor fee to bring them in. So accommodation for getting dressed the morning of the wedding is something to consider, especially if you have overseas guests coming for the wedding or out of town guests. You want to be able to, even if you're not paying for the accommodation, be able to point them in the right direction as to where they can stay. Transportation. So you're living in Kingston, you're getting married in Kingston, you don't need anywhere to stay. Who's going to drive you? You have to work out that transportation logistics of who is going to take the bride, the bridesmaids, the mother of the bride, the groomsmen, you know what I mean? All of that transportation, especially if you have, again, overseas or out of town guests to consider. Transportation is one factor. If you are getting married at a venue that doesn't have adequate parking and you have to park off-site, transportation like a shuttle service from vehicles to the venue and back may be a factor and should also be considered when making your decision. All right, the venue, and I spoke about briefly the infrastructure of a venue. This is probably one of the most important things to consider when you're planning your wedding, and here is why. Okay, questions. Right. So, as mentioned before, venues come with different features. Some venues may come with indoor space for a reception, may come with a gazebo to get married for your ceremony. It may come with guest bathrooms. It may come with adequate parking, and some may not. So once you are considering a venue, consider what you're getting with the venue, because if the venue doesn't provide these things, you will have to bring them in. And once you start bringing in tents, you're going to have to drape the tent. You're going to have to put functional lighting in the tent. You're going to have to know if the property has or gives electricity and to what capacity. You want to know that they have adequate parking for your guests, and if they have kitchen facilities or if that's going to have to be brought in. So all of these different areas will impact the overall budget. So some people may say, oh, this venue is cheaper than that venue, but you have to look on what you get with the venue, okay? Electricity. Some people may not even consider that you have to ask about electricity, but some venues offer electricity and some don't. Some offer electricity, but they don't have the capacity to operate the amount of equipment that is being brought in for all weddings. So, for example, you book a venue and the venue says, sure, we have electricity and we've been here for years and no problem. And then you come the day of the wedding and you bring your DJ and you bring a host of string lights and you bring a live band and you bring your catering team that is using a convection oven. And then once everybody starts pulling on this electricity, it may not be adequate. And what's the danger of that? One, you could damage the music equipment and then find yourself having to replace equipment, very expensive equipment that you don't want to go down that road. You may find that you're not able to get everything that you've paid for because, for example, a vendor, they brought 2 speakers or 4 speakers and the electricity can't manage the load and then they can only use one. Or the band can't play because, the voltage isn't enough to carry the equipment that they need to perform the live performance. Or you may have to plug out 2 of the chandeliers and, just leave one because it just can't manage the capacity. So electricity is one of the things that you need to consider and see how it impacts your budget. Security. Security is important, especially when you're having a big wedding, lots of vehicles. As we said before, parking. Some places has a good amount of parking, but cars still tend to spew out on the roads. You would have to consider security. You don't want at the end of the night, everybody had such a wonderful time and they came back and there was no vehicle. That's not nice. So security is something to consider. How many security guards do you need? How long do you need them for? That will depend on, of course, the venue and the size of the function that you're having. Decor will encompass your flowers, your bridal bouquets, your boutonnieres, your corsages, all the personal flowers for the bridal party, for the ceremony, for the reception, tables, chairs, linen, tents, as we said before, signage, all the little accessories and candles and lights that create that ambiance. Sound and lighting would include the music equipment. If you're going to need a disc jockey to play the equipment, if you're not having a live band, and you're going to also need functional lighting as well as lighting to create that ambiance and that mood. It's 2 different things. Catering and bar service. This is another big ticket item that will impact your budget. And your catering cost will depend on, of course, who the vendor is. You're going to want to consider if you're going to have hors d'oeuvres, which is finger foods. So when you're taking pictures with a bridal party, you have finger foods or hors d'oeuvres for your guests to munch on while you take your pictures. Entree, of course, is the dinner, and the cost of the catering will depend on how many dishes you choose. So you have buffet and you have plated service. Generally, plated service doesn't give you many options, maybe 1 or 2 different options, maybe 3. But buffet generally gives a little more options, so you may be able to get 3 meats, 3 sides, some people even more. And so the cost of the the catering, the food will depend on the type of food that you choose and how wide of a variety those options are for your guests. If you're going to do dessert, or is it going to be like a dessert station or buffet where you have a spread of desserts, or is it just a cake that you're going to cut and serve? So the food cost will depend on your options. It should also factor in rentals. Some caterers only provide the food, so they'll just come with the food, share the food, and go. Some caterers will provide the food along with the hardware, which is the plates, the silverware, the glassware, the chafing pans. And then most caterers will provide staff, their waiters, to serve. So the food will cost generally should be the food, the rentals, and the staffing. The bar cost is another one that will drive up the price. So depending on if you're going to do a full open bar service, if you're going to have rums and beers and wines, as well as juices, and the quantities that you put in place will depend on the number of guests you have and if they're drinkers or not drinkers. So that will impact your budget greatly. The wedding cake, things to consider if you're going to put a top on the cake, if you're going to put it on a cake stand, you're going to want to have a knife to cut and serve it. If you're going to do personalized flutes. So those are all there for ease of reference. Photography and videography. Generally, a photographer is a photographer and not both, but there are many vendors out there now who are either partnering with each other to give a better price. So what do I mean by that? You solicit the services of a well-known photographer who's very good for photography, and they give you that price. That's the price. And then you go and you contact a videographer, and they give you a price. That's another price. However, if you were to solicit the services of a photographer and say to him, can I get a package that includes videography as well? He may contact that same videographer, put everything in a bundle, and give it to you at a discounted price. So they come hand in hand, but they're not one of the same. So that's just something to keep in mind. And of course, the cost of that will depend on the package that you go for. And generally, photographers and videographers packages will be basically differentiated by hours. So, less hours, less money, more hours, more money, and more features, more shots. Use a drone, it's going to be more money. If they take you pictures of you getting ready, right up until the after party, it's going to be more money. So generally, videographers and photographers have different packages, and you can choose from their packages. And of course, you can customize as well to fit your budget. Marriage officiant or a pastor. This will impact your budget as one, they have to process the paperwork for you. So if you're not going to go to the Ministry of Justice and apply for your marriage license or your minister's license and take care of that legwork yourself, they normally charge you to handle the paperwork, come and conduct the wedding ceremony, and then they'll apply for the marriage certificates after it's done. So those three steps is what they charge for, and the cost of that will depend on, of course, who the marriage officiant is. Master of ceremonies. They host the wedding reception. Oh, they're probably one of the most, what would I say, underestimated service I have come to see in weddings. It's always an afterthought for most persons. They have a brother, they have a cousin, they have a friend, or the best man. The master of ceremonies is so important because it's the longest time of the wedding, right? So you're sitting, you're waiting on your table to be called, you're waiting on the food to be served, you're waiting on all the speeches to be over. And during that time, you want to be having fun, you know, you want to be laughing and you want to feel the love and you want to be entertained. And so choosing an MC, choosing the right MC for your wedding is important. Not saying that if you have a family, friend, or relative that is pretty good at entertaining persons that you can't use them. All I'm saying is don't underestimate the importance of a good MC. Live entertainment. Not all weddings have live entertainment, but if that is something that you're interested in, then you know they come in a wide range of selections. So you can have a steel band at cocktail hour, a violinist playing for the ceremony, a saxophonist, a wedding singer. You know, you can have the live band playing during the reception, or a fire dancing, you know, performing during or after the reception. So live entertainment is always a nice touch, but it's not absolutely necessary. But if it's something that you'd like to add, it's another cost to factor in your budget. Beauty services would include the hair styling, whether you're doing it yourself or you're going to your hairdresser before your wedding to get it done, visiting the barber shop. You need to include all those services as well when you're trying to put your budget together. Hairstylist, makeup artist, and to do your nails. So you might not do your nails the day of the wedding, but you have to do them before, you know, coming up to the wedding. So that's also a factor. Wedding favors, it's not a must. I've had several weddings with no favors, but if it's something that you would like to give your guests, then factor that in as well. Okay, weddings post-COVID, or should we say during COVID. What does that look like in Jamaica now? Right now, we are allowed 50 persons at a wedding. Weddings are to be hosted at venues at half capacity. So if a venue can only hold 50 people, they shouldn't have more than 25 people there. That is the requirement right now. And so for that reason, a lot of weddings have not been taking place because I guess, you know, persons are still very skeptical and so on. But if we are going to host a wedding, then it wouldn't be more than 50 persons, and all the protocols and social distancing must be maintained. How does that look? Okay, so let's see. The first thing you have to do, you've decided to go ahead and have the wedding during this time, and persons are questioning, should I go? How many persons? The first thing you have to do is communicate with the guests. So my suggestion would be to be open. If you're going to have 50 guests at the wedding, and someone asks how many guests are going to be there, you know, you tell them 50 guests are going to be there. But this is what we're going to do. Upon arrival, you will be checked. Your temperatures will be checked. Hand sanitizing stations or wash stations will be set up around the venue, around the wedding area, for that purpose. And you're going to ask your guests to either bring their masks or provide disposable masks for your guests at the wedding. So your guests get there, they're not surprised that their temperature is going to be checked. They're not surprised that you've asked them to wear masks because you've communicated this to them before they got there. So you're managing their expectations. So once they're there, the chairs for your ceremony, I would say, instead of placing each chair 6 feet apart, you place the chairs in clusters. So if you've invited a couple, you put 2 chairs for that couple together. Now, the easiest way to manage this process would be to use name tags. So you tag the chairs for your guests so everyone knows where they're sitting. So you group the chairs in clusters for the ceremony, and for your reception, usually we would say, sit anywhere you want for those casual laid back weddings. Now, during this time, we have to be very cautious and take all precautions. So tables would be spread further apart than usual, and the tables would only be set for the clusters. So, for example, if you have a table that can hold 10 persons, we would only try to fit 8 or 6 persons around that table to maintain some form of distancing. So 2 persons that come from the same household could sit side by side, but then another guest would be further apart. So if there's anyone out there that has any more questions for us, this is our contact information or email address or website that you can visit. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook and reach out to us at any time, and we will help you to guide you so you're able to put together a realistic budget that will help you to decide what's the next step for your wedding.
All right. The whole lot of information.
I'm stressed out, Jadie.
Like Jermaine is over here like, no, I'm tired. My
It's
stress.
exhausting.
I'm stressed just thinking about this. This is too much stuff.
Oh my
Like
God.
all of this is a part of planning a wedding, and yeah, it is. Which for me, is why I recommend persons use a planner. No, because it's just not easy to balance all of that while you're still doing your regular day to day, right?
Yeah.
But it was an awesome.
Right. That's a good point, because normally when you ask someone calls and you ask them what's your budget, they say, I don't know. And rightfully so, because they've never done this before. So they have no idea what the budget should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I tell someone a wedding can cost between $500,000 and $5 million, they're like, what? You know what I mean? But it will depend on a lot of those factors that we went through before. You know what I mean? And of course, if you're going to have a wedding for 100 persons or 150 persons, it's going to be more money to feed that many mouths, than 10 or 15 persons.
Yeah, that's what I find. Usually the food part is the most expensive. It's crazy. It's like it's a lot per person because
Yeah.
there's so much into preparing food for guests. So
Right. And that is why if you do a wedding somewhere that the food is already being prepared, like a resort or a venue that does its own catering, then they're not bringing in chefs and they're not bringing in waiters and they're not bringing in food because it's already there. You know what I mean? If it's a restaurant or a hotel, it's already on property. So then you get better value for your money there. You know what I mean? But all of those factors will impact the budget. So you have to kind of gauge how much you are able to spend, and then you take it from there.
yeah.
Right.
We had a question from Gabby Thompson asking what's the average cost for table I'm guessing that's tents or table, like
Rental.
yeah.
Average
Talk about
cost
that
for
a little bit. Yeah, I know it may depend on the type of tables or chairs, I guess, but
Right. So generally tables will rent for anywhere between $600 to $1,000 per table. However, if it's like a wooden banquet table, you'll be looking on anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000 for a wooden table. That's the ones that have no tablecloths on it.
Yeah.
you
Yes.
know, I'm glad I'm married already. That's all.
So, I mean, I just, well, Gabby, you can let us know if that answered your question,
Yeah.
if that's what you were asking and if it answered your question. But I just want to go back a little bit. Okay, yes, it did. Great, wonderful. So I just wanted to go back a little bit, Jadie, when you were talking about the types of venues. I had I had some idea that some of the hotels require you to stay on property, right? But I had no idea that Jewel actually allowed you to get married and all of that without
So
staying on
does that mean
property.
that's an option for
It's
us?
totally an option.
Yes, that property in particular. The other two jewels have been sold over to Sandals now. That's the reason why I only included the Jewel Paradise Cove. But yes, you can contact the weddings manager there, and they can arrange a wedding ceremony, which, as I said, won't be fully private, but you'll have that space wherever you choose to get married that will be corded off for you, and then the reception would be private.
And I think it's awesome that you noted some of those details that are included with
Very
the,
important details, because a lot of those things can creep up on you, meaning like days before or weeks before you're realizing that you need the little things, the little details, the place cards, or thinking about parking, or factoring in relatives, the elderly, those who are coming in that day. Maybe there needs to be a ramp because one person is in a wheelchair. All of those little things.
yeah.
Stressful.
So even if you choose a venue like the hotel, it's important to note, and this stood out for me, to note that you're expected to use their services, and if you're not using their services, then you have to pay for someone else to come in to do that thing.
You have to pay for everything.
Right. So with hotels generally, they call it a vendor fee. So they have a list of vendors that they work with for all the services. So if you choose to bring someone or not use one of their vendors, you have to bring a vendor fee for each vendor. So if you want to bring in your own photographer, you have to pay a fee. So if the vendor fee, and that vendor fee, by the way, can range between 300 to 1,000 or 1,500 US per vendor.
Per vendor. What?
Per vendor.
Wow, that's wow.
So depending on, so I've gotten several requests for persons that are getting married at Sandals or Rio or wherever, that I'm not a vendor. I'm not, a vendor with that resort. And the first thing I tell them, check with the resort and find out what the vendor fee is. Because it doesn't make sense to go through this whole process with me, and then at the end of the day, they tell you, "Oh, you're gonna have to pay $1,000 for Plush Touch to come on property." And then they're like, "Okay, we'll use what you have." You know what I mean? So each hotel's vendor fee will vary.
So I think with those things considered, for me on a personal level, I'm looking at then like a semi-private kind of thing. I think from our perspective, because we did mention that we are looking at the whole vow renewal ceremony.
So it's a vow renewal is pretty much you're planning the wedding again.
Almost.
Yeah.
So so we're looking at it. I see we have another question from Gabby though. Okay, so she asks, when working with a wedding planner, do you break down all the costs?
Great question, Gabby. So all wedding planners have different ways that they operate. So when you are doing your homework and when you're checking around to see who you're comfortable working with, that should be a question that you direct to the wedding planner. Now, it's important to note that every wedding planner is not a decorator, and every decorator is not a wedding planner.
Amen.
That's a good point. That's a very
I
good point.
happen to be a wedding planner that does decor, so I do both. But some wedding planners they focus solely on wedding planning. And so you would have to ask them how does their process work? Because some wedding planners may source all the vendors and give you a figure and say, this is the cost for your wedding, that one cost. Some wedding planners will charge and say, this is my cost, and you work with whichever vendors you want, and those are their costs. And so it really just depends on how they operate. It's not a standard across the board. Some wedding planners that do decor do wedding packages, which is a bulk price, where they organize everything for you. So they do everything and they charge you. If it's $1 million, it's $1 million. It's $2 million, it's $2 million, and they give you no breakdown. So each person that you're checking around with, you'd have to ask them, how does their process work?
So what's typically the rule of engagement? So I know you just gave us that breakdown. So what do I expect from a wedding planner, like leading up to the wedding, on the day of the wedding, maybe even are there things to even consider post wedding? I don't know usually how those things are wrapped up. What's that process of engagement like?
All right. So generally, a wedding planner, once you've solicited, you've decided which one that you're comfortable working with, you've paid them a deposit, and you've started the process with planning. The wedding planner, after making their recommendations, you don't necessarily have to take, you know what I mean? So I can say to you, boy, Merrick is a really good photographer. Big up, Merrick. But you don't necessarily have to work with Merrick. It's just my recommendation because I've worked with him over the years. He's exceptional. I've never had bad feedback from my clients. But it doesn't mean that you have to work with that photographer. It's a recommendation. Now, what I generally do for my clients is that I give them options. So I would give you 3 photographers that I think are good photographers based on your budget. So I'm not going to recommend Merrick to you if you have a $500,000 wedding budget. No, that's all right, enough about Merrick. But you know what I mean? I'm just saying that normally I would give the bride or the couple options based on what fits their budget. So if you say to me, this is my budget, but this is my priority, or food is my priority, then I'm not going to give you a caterer that is mediocre. Right. I'm going to give you 3 exceptional options, and based on your budget and based on whatever tastings you do, you decide, okay, I want to work with this caterer. But I would give you options based on your priority and your budget. So at the end of the day, you have made a decision on who your vendors are. I'm only guiding you. I can only say to you, boy, this contract doesn't say that and that, and are you sure you want to, go down that road because this says that. I guide you, but a wedding planner really should not be the one to say, this is who you're going to use and that's it. You know what I mean? Because it's your wedding and it's your money, so you have to know what you're comfortable and who you're comfortable working with. So once you've gotten all of that out of the way, Jermaine, it really just depends what the process looks like, depends on the experience that you're having. So for example, somebody that is having a weekend experience,
Mm.
That process is going to be different, because they're going to have they're going to be outings with the bridal party and the family, and they're going to be from here to there, and you know what I mean? It's like a weekend experience. So fitting in rehearsal and rehearsal dinner, you know, before the wedding, the day of the wedding, sometimes parties after, like a beach party after the day after the wedding. You know, so it really just depends on the type of wedding that you're having, will depend on the amount of involvement and, you know, what takes place between you and the planner. But generally, regardless of the size, once you book a wedding planner, I don't want to say day of coordinator, because some day of coordinators only come on the day of, like they work for the day and, you know, try and make things happen the way it's supposed to happen on the day. Me personally, I don't think that works very well if you're not already involved in the process before. You don't know who is supposed to come and what they're supposed to be doing. I don't know how much you can really do on the day of the wedding. But generally, wedding planners should find a good time to conduct some kind of walkthrough or rehearsal before the wedding. So if it's either the day before the wedding or 2 days before the wedding, preferably around the same time you're getting married, so you have an idea of where the sun is going to be and where you're going to stand, and you know,
very important.
All important. So I've never understood. So we've been able to attend a few weddings. Well, you were at our wedding, so that's a blur to me. My own wedding was a blur to me, but I've since attended a few weddings. And when I look at it, there's so many little details to think about that it just blows my mind. It feels like a full-on event, and so
It is though, and I think that having that concern
being taken
transferred,
away.
yes, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're transferring that responsibility to your planner. So you, as the bride and groom, you don't have to worry about it. You have a lot less on your mind, and you can enjoy your day when someone else is doing all of the coordination.
Yeah, because we've seen weddings where things are falling apart and the bride and groom is just stressed out.
Yeah, and it takes away from your experience, the experience of your wedding. Now, if you have the capacity, the ability to handle that kind of stress well, and you think you want to do it, I mean, by all means, but it's just not our recommendation.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Here's what I say, right? Everybody may not be able to afford a wedding planner, okay? Let's just be frank. What I would say is find a friend or a relative that you feel is good at that kind of a thing, and is willing to take on that challenge, to help as best as possible, that you don't have to be answering your phone. You know, the caterers come and they don't know where's the kitchen and where to put this, and the DJ don't know where to plug in the thing, and the generator man not there to start up the generator for them to test this, and them don't know where the wires are. Like, if somebody comes to you 3 times, Ren, 3 times for insignificant thing, it's going to start to weigh down on you.
Yeah.
You know what? It's not that anything is falling apart, but when somebody keeps, excuse me, where is this? Excuse me, who must show me where to do it? I mean, as you said, you're not going to be present, because all you're going to be thinking of, all right, who will come next? All right, who will show this person where to do this and where to put that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm in agreement. Have someone, even if it's not a paid planner, but have someone who you can trust to handle that stuff for you. Jades, we have another question from Gabby.
Yeah. She was asking, when you were referring to those wonderful figures at $500,000, are you speaking in Jamaican or are you speaking in US dollars?
Oh, Jamaican.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just for my curiosity. What's maybe the most No, sorry. I was gonna ask what's the most expensive wedding you've probably seen or been a part of, but that's private information. It's just, I know weddings can be ridiculously expensive. So
Yeah, I can tell you that the maybe the most elaborate wedding I have been a part of was an Indian wedding last year at Jamaica Inn, and I only did the reception.
okay,
And,
Yeah, I remember the pictures from that wedding.
yeah,
and it was millions. My bill was millions for the reception. And
Yeah.
High Flora did the ceremony decor. They did the pre-wedding party the day before the wedding. They did the after party and the after party. And I mean,
We're a bit too tired for that.
yeah,
yeah, that wedding was a lot of money. They actually, it was a full property takeover at Jamaica Inn, so they booked the entire hotel.
yeah, and
So you can just imagine.
it is expensive. So I can just yeah,
Right. You can imagine the that bill at the end of the day.
yeah. You know what? Yeah,
But if you follow the stats, the NOT provides like average wedding cost in the States every year. Like they'll do, well, it should be interesting to see what the average will be at the end of 2020, right? With all these micro weddings. But generally in the States, an average wedding will be like between 30 and 35,000 US. So you calculate that in Jamaica, and you may be looking at about $5 million, right? Give or take. And so you'd have on the lower end and you'd have on the higher end, but somewhere in the middle there. So and I would say we're not as expensive as overseas, but it just depends on where, as I said, the venue. Once you choose that venue, it's going to determine what you spend. Because if you book, for example, a property, a private property like Laughing Waters, for argument's sake, Laughing Waters is a beautiful property, but it doesn't come with anything. You have to bring in the generator, you have to bring in tents. If you have 20 people and the rain falls, you're all going to be wet. There's nowhere, there's no contingency plan. So you're gonna have to bring a tent and drape the tent and put lighting in the tent. And there is a powder room, one toilet that is available for use when you rent the property. So if you have 100 people there, one toilet is really not adequate. You're gonna have to bring in portable toilets. So the venue is going to determine how much you end up spending on that wedding, because everything is going to have to be brought in. If, for example, there's another property in Ocho Rios called Hibiscus Lodge. They have a restaurant there, Almond Tree, but the food is there already. So once you book that property, they will provide the catering service. You pay per head, and you bring in whatever decorations you're bringing in. And so the cost of that is going to be significantly less than if you were to book a venue and have to bring in.
yeah.
Imagine you're setting up. You're setting up the infrastructure. You know what I mean? You're setting up the tent. You're setting up the current. You're bringing in music. You're bringing in a kitchen. So
And that's a very important point, because sometimes when we ask for quotations, we might ask, okay, how much is it to rent the venue? And we look at just the venue cost plainly in itself, and we're comparing a Laughing Waters to a Hibiscus Lodge when we're not thinking about what else do we need to bring in.
Yeah.
So what I'm taking away from what you're saying is that when we're planning for these types of events, weddings, vow renewals, whatever it is, when we're planning, we're thinking about the venue cost, we need to look at it holistically.
Yeah, look at everything that the venue comes with and what it doesn't,
and what you need to bring, and what those costs would be like, and total that, and do a comparison that way.
Where most people go wrong is that they get excited and they call a venue and they get the venue and it's available and it's affordable and they book it. You pay a deposit, and then after you start looking for a planner, and now you've already committed to this venue. So it's either you're going to cancel and ask for a refund or a partial refund or whatever it is that is outlined in the contract, and then start again. But most persons, you already booked the venue and then you're trying to work around. So now you find yourself probably compromising on things that you really wanted, because now you have to bring in things that you didn't consider you had to bring in. You know what I mean? And that is why, hold on, Jeremy, that is why it is important to try and find a planner before you start making any decisions or you start paying any money, because now that planner will easily advise you before you waste your time. And that is why so many people get stressed out in the process, because they don't know what they're running into. You know, as a planner, you know what's at the end of that road. So I can tell you, if you go down that road, this is what you're going to buck up on. You know what I mean? But most persons, they're trying to do it themselves, and then they get so frustrated and stressed out when they realize that at the end of that road, they meet on that, and that's not what they want, and they have to go back and start another journey again. When you solicit the services of a wedding planner, she can tell you, or he can tell you off the bat, okay, if this is what you're working with, here are your options realistically. If you have somebody else that's willing to chip in and double your budget or to help, you know, provide some financial assistance, then you can look on that or that. But based on what you have in front of you, those are not going to be feasible options. You know what I mean? But it is what it is, I guess.
So I was gonna say what I noticed with a lot of what happens when persons are planning weddings is that you start out with what you think is a reasonable budget, and as you go, because there's not adequate planning, it just like you started with a budget of 500,000, and then you're spending a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and it becomes $1 million wedding, or things that happen last minute that you didn't factor in. So sometimes you know what you want or all that you want, but that process to quantify and plan it properly is, and it causes a whole lot of stress.
Exactly.
I think one more thing to consider that we didn't discuss today is the support. So Jadie would have mentioned support from others, right? Financial support.
Answer that early.
But also, if persons are committing to helping you or committing to doing something specific for your wedding, that can be just be clear. Be very clear about what they're committing to.
And determine the quality of what's promised, because you may know somebody that does photography or say I know a guy, and you haven't seen their work. So you don't know the quality that they're gonna bring. And you may end up feeling, well, it's better I would have paid for it than what I got,
Right.
And persons may promise you things. Sure, I'll help with that. Closer to the wedding, you hear, no, I can't afford it, or I only have 10,000 when the thing costs 50. And now you have to use your own money to cover the difference when you are planning to have that offset by that person.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a point that stands out for us because it was our own experience.
Yes.
And
be mindful of promises.
And it's just be very clear, because someone might make a commitment to you and you interpret it one way, but that wasn't their intention. So just understand exactly what they're committing to, and you have to also ascertain whether this is someone who will come through for you, someone who you can trust to come through for you, or if it's a little iffy and you make a plan B.
Yeah, because in fairness, they may be committing, not fully understanding what it
entails.
So somebody will say, I'll take care of the photography for you. When they say the cost of it, they may be like, well, no, I can't afford that.
Right.
So it's good. So and that's why I think a planner is so extremely important, because it would be better, I think, to invest in the cost of a planner, maybe cut back something, but you end up probably saving money, because you may spend that more on the other side.
You do. And the reason why is because they're saving you by losing out on by making a bad decision and losing. Before I forget though, I wanted to mention I don't know where your viewers are from, but Jamaicans, let me speak to my Jamaicans out here. So you call around and you're doing your shopping around, and you call someone and you say, "Can I get a quote?" You know, because you're doing your research. Fair enough. That's good. That's how you kind of trying to determine what is what, right? And they say, "What is your budget?" I don't know. Okay, what's the range that you're comfortable, you think it's realistic staying in? I don't know.
No.
You must have an idea of what you can afford and what you cannot afford. I personally, Jadie Soutar, cannot afford a $10 million wedding. I cannot afford a $5 million wedding. You understand what I'm saying, Renee? Now, when you have no idea, you don't give the planner or the decorator that
A working budget, yeah.
that budget. Listen, let me be frank. There are some vendors out there that their service cost is your budget.
Yeah.
It doesn't include a pin. Okay? Don't waste somebody else's time and your time. Okay? If you say to me, this is my budget, $10,000 is my budget, I would say, okay, this is what you can get with that budget. But Jamaicans, I find, believe that if they tell you what their budget is,
you're gonna charge them.
And charge them. Let me just say this explicitly. Whatever you have in your head, it still can do. Let's just put it out there. And the reason why, here's the reason why. Even if you think your budget is $2 million, right? In your mind, you think, suppose you can get a good wedding.
I can have
what is good. What is good for you is not out of this world for somebody else. So your $2 million, you're probably thinking you can get a $5 million wedding with your $2 million budget. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let's just be open, and this will help to alleviate a lot of the stress. And this is why when people are doing their own planning and initial checking around, it's so stressful because sometimes it's difficult to get information. Some vendors, if you don't even tell them what your budget is, some people don't even bother to respond to you, and you get frustrated and you say, "Boy," I've had so many brides call me and say, "Boy, Jadie, thank you for responding so quickly. I've sent out requests to 2 others or 3 other people, and 2 weeks later, and I still can't get a quote," because it is so tiring. Guys, I'm picking up for the other vendor them now. It is so tiring to go through and do so many quotations and all this work and then you send them out and you don't even get a response. Sometimes you don't even get received. You know what I mean? So people have to know, sieve and decipher what is worth their time to respond to. If you're open from day one and say, "This is my budget," then the person will say to you, "Renee, thank you for reaching out to us. However, we're not able to,
Need that budget. Yeah.
Exactly. Based on your budget, we wouldn't be able to fit our services or whatever response they want to give." I frankly tell people that, boy, it's a little tight, right? Because if this is your budget and this costs that and that costs that, boy, I don't know what you would be willing to compromise on. When you find a way to tell, but when you don't tell somebody that this is what I have working with, and you let the person sit down and work through all of these quotations and put all of this work together to send to you, and it is way out there, you're just like, huh? You waste your time and you waste the vendor's time. Just be open, and it will help to move the process along faster. You will find your perfect fit faster that way.
Yeah,
that's good.
There's this expectation that I think some persons have, that when they ask for a quote, it's easy for you to give an estimate of that price.
Yeah.
Because there are so many variables, those prices need to be validated. So that takes time. Sometimes it takes a vendor a couple of hours to generate that quote for you. So that's to the point you're making, JD, where if you just say, well, my budget is X, then the vendor may be able to say, well, at least 3 things I know are gonna push you over that budget, then it don't make sense.
Right.
As opposed to them running around getting prices from persons, comparing it, marking it up, doing this, doing that, spend a couple hours preparing that quotation. But then you to say, well, that's 10 times my budget,
Right. So, the pricing is not ready made.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
All right. So, guys, if there are any other questions for Jadie, now would be the time to ask her.
Yes,
we are about to wrap up.
Yeah, if you're watching this on a replay, just post a question in the comment and we'll be sure that Jadie gets it. Yeah, you have a final question. I have a question.
Go ahead.
In the interest of husbands who I think sometimes watch their wives get completely or their fiancés get completely stressed out. So personally, what I would typically say to even the couples that we'll counsel, we'll say to them, when you're planning your wedding, I mean, and this may not be the best advice, so I'm pretty much preparing to ask you what you recommend, but I say to persons, focus on the experience, focus on your dress, your ring, the things that focus on even, that, like, for example, I wish I did a video. So things that will make the memory last. For me, I would have a wedding just us and close family than feed 5,000. That's so I recommend persons just think about it that way so that you don't lose your mind trying to get friend of a friend and auntie and uncle and a whole lot of people that are just there sometimes to just kind of criticize and pick at everything when you could just have a great experience. So what would you recommend that a couple focus on in terms of, yes, it's touchy for me, right? How do you focus? What would you tell them to focus on? If they had to choose some things to give up, what would you have them prioritize?
Great question. So here's what I normally say. Don't sweat the small stuff. Okay, and that goes over a lot of people's head. Let me say it another way. You and I, we sit down and we work out this thing, right? We have our worksheet, we have our vision board, and this is how it's going to be. But guess what? Life happens, right? And so sometimes things don't work out 100% the way we envision it. But guess what's the best part? Only me and you know what that vision board was, right? So the guests come, they don't know that the rose was supposed to be blush pink and not a mauve color, right? The guests don't know that you were supposed to have 20 chandeliers or 5 chandeliers instead of 4 because one broke coming in the truck, okay? So when the guest comes, they don't know what you were supposed to have. You didn't send them this vision board and send them all of what you were supposed to do. So when they come, they're just coming to enjoy the day and experience the love. They don't know what went wrong. So when you're stressing about it, you're only ruining your day because they're having a whale of a time. I've had weddings where something may have been a little off and the bride's getting miserable and fussy and you try to calm them down and 10 people come to me at the end of the wedding and say, oh my God, this was the best wedding I've been to, and I'm just saying, tell the bride that no. You understand what I'm saying? Because they don't know what was supposed to be. Okay, so you can't sweat the small stuff because at the end of the day, that the day goes by like that, you know.
Yeah.
So if you're not there, and as Renee said, you're not present, then you're not gonna savor those moments, because when you're thinking back on a wedding day, you're going to be thinking about how miserable it was and how this person pissed you off, and you know what I mean. And that's not the memories you want to have. You want to look back and smile and laugh at that joke or something that happened,
Yeah, I
agree.
Focus on what matters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You had a final question?
No.
Okay.
So we haven't received any further questions for
Yeah.
you, Jade. So we are just gonna say thank you once again. It was just such an awesome time of learning.
Yeah.
And I say learning because we surely did not go through this level of detail for our own wedding.
Jadie, where were you 11 years ago? That's what I was saying.
But that's
Where
a
were
different
you?
story.
At the bank.
Yeah, but it was awesome. It was wonderful having you, and I'm glad that you were able to share value. Gabby says she will be in contact soon.
That's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
Great,
that
Gabby.
that is wonderful. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, viewers, for being here. And we're just going to leave you with JD's contact information once more, if it is that you would like to contact her for further wedding planning information. And there are other services that she offers. Go ahead. There are other services that she offers as well, and we will be sure to leave the link to her website in the description of this video, so you'll be able to get in touch with her that way as well. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Jadie. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Be sure to like the video, share the video with someone you know, save them the stress of having to plan their wedding.
Without knowing how to go about it.
Yeah, Jadie is excellent at what she does. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Plush Touch.
The Plush Touch.
At the Plush Touch. Some weddings, weddings to be able to afford. They look amazing. So yes, we will see.
You have a couple of years to save, Jermaine. You have a couple of years to save.
Can make it happen.
Yeah. So yes, thank you so much, Jadie. All right. So let us.
So we will be back next week, guys, with another live. Look out on our social media platforms for that one. Once it is out, be sure to set the reminder for the live.
Yes, you're not going to want to miss the next episode. Trust me. It's gonna be one of those topics that everybody wants to talk about in terms of marriage and preparing for marriage. So definitely look out for that one. And yeah,
we'll see you then. Bless you.